It was a blowout in Conti Forum, but for the first time in a long time, it wasn't Boston College that was on the receiving end. All of this and more on today's Locked On Boston College.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Boston College. I am your host, AJ Black. I'm also the editor and publisher of BCBulletin.com, part of the Sports Illustrated and Fan Nation Network. Check out all my work there. On today's show, we are going to get into BC trouncing Florida State 71-55. Now, let's dive into this game. Let's not even get around all the other stuff. So, heading into this game, there were two major storylines that I thought would impact this. There was the injuries was the big one, right, on both sides. The Florida State was out 4 of their starters, but on the other hand, Boston College was out TJ Bickerstaff, and then about a half hour before the game, contrary to what John Rothstein said, DeMar Langford missed the game. Now, John Rothstein, who looked like he was getting yelled at by DeMar's dad on Twitter earlier, tweeted out that he had talked to Earl Grant, which he usually does. I mean, Rothstein is a guy that always talks about, tweeting to all the coaches, or texting the coaches, excuse me, that Grant said he was going to play. And, things changed, so he didn't play. So BC was down 2. So Florida State was down 4 guys. BC was down 2. So the injury was going to be definitely a factor heading into this game. Well, one team came out of the gates looking red hot, and that was not Florida State. Boston College came out scorching hot out of the gate, scoring 11 points in a row and on 3 3-pointers from 3 different players. It was Zackery, Mekhi Ashton Langford, and Brevin Galloway. And they just went off from there. It was never a close game. I mean, Florida State had some little runs here and there, but their offense was just putrid. They shot 7. They had a game, let's just say, from 3-point range that reminded me of BC from some previous couple of weeks, where they were just putrid. They shot 17% from 3-point range, and they just couldn't find the bottom of the bucket. And for a team that was missing a lot of guys, they have a star, and he's a top, he's a 5-star recruit, and that is Matt Cleveland. He went 7 of 18. So, I get the injuries. That's obviously a big deal. But when you have a star like that playing against a team like BC, who everyone just rags on for having no talent at all, you should still be able to beat them, and they couldn't do it. Every guy, like John Butler, 1 for 9. Nagom, 1 for 3. Evans, 1 for 5. I know he was playing hurt too. Fletcher, Cameron Fletcher, their starting forward, was the only guy really that kept them in this game. Cleveland had some buckets, but man, he was hot and cold for Florida State. Then, I mean, you guys aren't here to hear about Florida State. Let's talk about BC. They played out of their minds, and who was the star of this game? It was Jaeden Zackery, who was dynamic with 18 points, 8 rebounds, and 6 assists, and only 1 turnover. And you watched the game, you watched what Zackery was doing out there. He looked like he was playing at a different speed than everyone else. Florida State just looked lethargic. And I know both teams were, coming back off of a game on Saturday. But Zackery was like, he get a rebound, he'd just run it up the court. He, either transition bucket or set up an assist. He was 4 for 4 from 3-point range. He, that first half, he just set the tone, and that was it. And then, once he had set that tone, it was James Karnick in the second half that really put the game away. Because, as bad as Florida State played, they hung around a little bit. They were able to chip away at the lead, and you started to feel at points, once they started putting that full court pressure on BC, and BC started choking the ball away, that they might be able to come back. They got the ball up to about 12. But it was then James Karnick who had like 2 or 3 big dunks in the second half, and one of them was on a beautiful pass from Mekhi Ashton Langford, who threw that pass within the tightest window you could imagine, and Karnick just slammed that home, and so he put the game away. It was all on Karnick. But there were some other great performances too. Brevin Galloway still had 14 points. What stuck out to me in terms of just a a role player. Kanye Jones looked pretty good out there. He had 8 points. He went 2 for 4 from 3-point range, including a 3-pointer at the very end of the game to kind of put it away, like to end it. It was nice to see him kind of get his feet underneath him. Mekhi Ashton Langford, he had 5 points. He fouled out of the game. He didn't have his best game again, but he didn't have to. That's the thing with Mekhi Ashton Langford is you don't want him to be, you really don't want him to have to be your number one scorer, because it's not his. He's a facilitator. He's a guy. He's a slasher. You don't want him to be a volume scorer, and right now he's not, and that's great because you had Zackery do it. You had Karnick do it. There's also a great moment in this game too, where tempers flared up and Quinton Post got into it with James Worley on Florida State, and Worley took quite the flop onto the ground, but to his credit, Post shoved him, but it looked like he got shot the way he fell there. Post, he had 10 points again. Good game from him, and it's an easy win for BC. Florida State has completely fallen off the map. They showed it on the graphic during the game. This is the team that in the beginning of January was the top team in the ACC. They were number one. And then, they'd beaten Duke. They had, beaten UNC. They've had a whole bunch of good wins. Then the injuries hit. And it hit hard. And now they're going to possibly look at playing on Tuesday at the ACC tournament. While Boston College, I'm not going to rule it out yet. I know they're like 9th or 10th right now, so they're still kind of on the bubble. But they've got some winnable games to end this season. Next game I believe they have is NC State, who is awful. They're the worst team in the ACC right now, and BC hopefully will get DeMar Langford back and Bickerstaff, and at this point I don't even think Bickerstaff is honestly all that necessary with the way these other guys are playing, but it's nice to have depth. But that could be a win. They get Clemson again, who they've beaten. They get Georgia Tech, who they've beaten. There's a possibility here, and this could be a fun storyline to follow. That BC avoids that Tuesday game for the first time in a decade. That would be huge. And we talk about indicators for Earl Grant and what he needs. What do you need to see this team take a step forward? That would be like 8 wins in the ACC if they won that, and then maybe like a 9th in the tournament. That's a nice way to start a career off. I think Jim Christian had 4 or 5 wins his first year, but I think it's indicative, right, that this team is showing that they can win these games, and I think they could easily beat Clemson and Georgia Tech and NC State. So skipping that Tuesday game, that would be a huge step in the right direction for this program, and set them up with guys like Prince Aligbe, who's coming in next year, who I just posted on our Twitter page. Had 32 points for his team, and they're a very good team. He had 32 points for them. And Donald Hand, I've been posting about him. They're getting some good scores coming in, and that's exactly what this team needs to go along with some of these other guys. This is a chance for Boston College to build that momentum going into 2022. And you got to take advantage of games like this, right? Florida State was hurt. They're a mess right now, and it's injuries, and Leonard Hamilton's a great coach. He's doing the best with what he's got. But you got to take advantage. You got to win those games, and that's exactly what BC did this week. So good game, good win, and it must feel good to get out of that loss column for the first time in 2 weeks. Now, in a moment, I'm going to switch it up and talk a little football news as Boston College went for a wide receivers coach that I had no clue that they were even looking at. Now, football might be over this season, but basketball is in full steam for both pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props to where the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is the number one spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC odds right to the Olympic coverage and information. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. Head on over to BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, this is AJ Black. I am the editor and publisher of BCBulletin.com. Thank you all for listening. If you've made this your first listen every single day, I want to thank each and every one of you. You guys are awesome. I mean, the fans that listen to the show, you've made yourself known to me. You've reached out to me on Twitter, social media. Thank you, every one of you. I hope you enjoy this. I try to make it fun. I try to make it informative for you so that you get all your Boston College news. And you guys have that do this every single day and listen to it. You mean a lot to me. You really do. So this is talking a little bit about coaching, as Boston College football has reportedly ended their coaching shuffling. So earlier this year, we lost, Boston College lost John McNulty. They lost Frank Cignetti, their offensive coordinator, replaced him with John McNulty, the tight ends coach from Notre Dame. They also lost Matt Applebaum, their offensive line coach of the Miami Dolphins. He was replaced by Dave DeGuglielmo, a longtime offensive line coach who was with Louisiana Tech but had a whole bunch of experience at the NFL level. The other coach that left was Joe Daly, their wide receiver coach, formerly of St. Peter's Prep. He ended up with the Carolina Panthers on Matt Rule's staff. And I had been saying all along that I expected Richie Gunnell possibly to move over to wide receivers. They're going to move Savant Huggins to running backs coach. And if you go back, you can listen to me say it. I said I had no people telling me this. This is just based off of my intuition. Boston College went in a completely different direction, and they hired Darrell Wyatt, the wide receivers coach from UCF. Now, when you follow Jeff Hafley's coaching searches, for the most part, you'd assume that most of them have had connections with him. But we've seen now 2 in a row that don't have any connection with him. Dave Googs, I think he goes by Googs now, Dave DeGuglielmo, their offensive line coach, and Darrell Watt I cannot find any connection with him and Hafley. Darrell Wyatt, has been with UCF for the last 4 years, and he's had a ton of experience with some really good wide receivers, including Ryan O'Keefe, who had 84 receptions, and he had Wyatt had 3 of the best offenses, passing offenses in 2019 and 2020, and he worked with Gabriel Davis. If you watched the Buffalo Bills this postseason, you saw how good he is. Marlon Williams, another good wide receiver. So he's got a really good pedigree. Just one pedigree that, it doesn't match with anything Boston College has. He's originally from Texas. His coaching resume is scattered all through schools that have nothing to do with the ACC, including Kansas, Texas, Oklahoma State, Houston, Arkansas State, UCF, Oklahoma, Kansas, but Hafley's got his guys again. Someone with a smattering of NFL experience. He was an intern for the Eagles, Broncos, and Bucks, and was a wide receivers coach for the Vikings. Though I looked, it was 2006. I was like, was he with Randy Moss? He just missed him by a year or two. So he does have NFL experience as well. He's got a good pedigree. Anyone who has coached at Oklahoma, Texas, even UCF, you've seen, he's been around, both Gus Malzahn, Josh Heupel. He's got a good resume on some really, really good teams. He knows how to win. He's got some good wide receivers that have come through his program. No huge red marks on his resume. I can't complain. It'll be interesting to see what they use him to recruit for, though, because, Joe Daly was normally the New Jersey guy. He was Northern New Jersey. This guy, Darrell Wyatt is from Texas. He's not a Jersey dude. So that's usually Vince Ogabase's region. Coach Vince has been mostly a Texas guy. They're really going to pound Texas now with 2 different guys that have that experience. That'll be interesting to see. It's a good hire. I like it. It's a little outside the box in terms of what Boston College is used to doing, and I think that's good. I don't like BC just going with, young guys. Like Matt Applebaum was good at times, but he wasn't proven. So what did they do? They went out and they got a guy, Dave DeGuglielmo, who had NFL experience. He's a Super Bowl champion. He's got a pedigree. Darrell Wyatt has a pretty good pedigree himself. It's not as good as that, but again, I think it's a step up from Joe Daly in terms of his pedigree. He's also been an offensive coordinator for Texas. He was a co-offensive coordinator for Texas. And so he's got everything that you would look for. And that should be it for Boston College. Unless Boston College somehow gets poached again. And the coaching searches right now, it's still, anything could still happen. But the NFL is basically wrapping up a lot of their positional hires and things like that at this point, so I don't think you'll see anyone leave. But, Azar Abdul Rahim is a name I saw floated for Rutgers for their secondary coach. That's not happening. I saw both Rutgers 247 and Rivals say that would be like their top choice. From things that I've heard, I've heard that BC pays better. He's got a promotion. He's the assistant head coach at BC. He wouldn't be that under Greg Schiano. I don't think they'd just bring in a new coach and make him associate head coach. So he's not going anywhere. Some Rutgers folks have a very inflated self-worth, and especially with Schiano back, they think that this program is above everyone else. He's not going to Rutgers. They'll get a good hire, I'm sure. They're doing a nice job. They're just not going to get AAR. So he's the only name that I've heard floated recently, but it's not realistic. And so I think BC's done in terms of losing coaches. I think this is it. So they lost 3. They got some new guys in. It's going to be a whole new look on that offense. It'll be interesting to see with Dracovic and Zay and Jalen Gill and all these, some of these other returners, Pat Garwo, and that new look offensive line. It's going to be a lot of changes, and this spring practice is going to be so interesting to watch and get a hold of things. Though, as I said, don't get too excited about it. Both Halfley and McNulty both said basically they're not going to show much in the spring games, and practices are pretty much close to the media anyways, and I can't report any of it, even if I can go. So we're sworn to secrecy about like what we see. But it should be interesting heading into September's game against Rutgers. So in a moment, I want to talk a little bit about BC's new NIL deal, and I think it's going to be something that Boston College fans are going to like to hear about in terms of BC becoming competitive in that market. But before we do that, let me tell you a little bit about RockAuto.com. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure often pointless and seemingly intimidating questions and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing only the brand their warehouse happens to carry? You have computers, you can access RockAuto.com and save. You'll save time and money when you use RockAuto.com. Why spend 30, 50, or even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or car dealership when you can head to Rock Auto, a family business, and save for every customer? They have an easy-to-use catalog that you just put your make and model in, boom, they'll tell you what they have, whether it's brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, or even new carpet. So just go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. And make sure to write Locked On in there. How did you hear about us box so they know we sent you. Amazing selection of reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. This is Locked On Boston College, AJ Black. The world of NIL, or name, image, and likeness, has been the talk of college sports for the last year and a half. And Boston College has been pretty much in the forefront of, not falling behind in terms of, getting their athletes where they want to be, but not really not being a leader at that yet. You've seen some of these schools, like obviously like Bryce Young was a big one where he apparently made about $1 million before he even walked on campus. You're seeing all these other big deals that some of these schools are getting, whether it's the Beats by Dre, almost $1 million deal that Caleb Williams just got with USC, to some of the other smaller deals that even like fried chicken or fried food down south with some of the athletes that they've been, or barbecue that they've been doing with some of these recruits and commits. So Boston College has had some of that. You've seen a little bit with like Brevin Galloway. I saw him putting some stuff up and some smaller stuff as well. But Boston College announced a new initiative that I thought was really interesting. And it's a partnership with the Brander Group launch for group licensing for student athletes. And now this was announced late last week. And Brander allows for students, the collective use of student athletes' NIL and licensing and marketing programs co-branded with the BC logos and marks. Students and athletes will have the option to voluntarily join a group licensing program. The Brander Group will facilitate group licensing opportunities on behalf of the student athletes. So all of that, what does that mean? With no specific timeline, this could mean certain things such as inclusion in trading card programs, video games, and co-branded jerseys that would include the student athlete's name and number, as well as Boston College trademarks and logos. So A few things in that I thought were really important. First of all, video games, which we knew were going to come. We're waiting still for EA to create that new college football game, and that's going to get all of the athletes paid. Any athlete that's in that because of the O'Bannon lawsuit, they're going to get paid, and that's good, right? That's just across the board for any school that has that. But this will help with that too. But the bigger one that I thought was really interesting on here was the jerseys. So basically what they're saying with co-branded jerseys is basically BC is partnering with the athletes, and they're going to probably take their cut because this is a business, of course. But athletes will be able to sell their jerseys now. So you could go to a BC football game, say go to the Rutgers game, and in in Campanella Way, you could get jerseys for Phil Dracovic or Zay Flowers, and you can get it with their name and number. Now, for years, they kind of hedged it a little bit. They'd have number 12 when Matt Ryan was there, but it would never say Matt Ryan, and he'd never see a cut of it. Now those guys are going to get some money out of this. And this seems like a simple thing, but not every school has this. Some of them have it. I saw a Clemson fan writer saying that Clemson doesn't have this yet. So, and the way Dabo talks, it might be a while. But, this is a big deal because you want to do the little things right first, right? For this whole NIL situation, just being able to sell your own jersey, to say to recruits, right? You're going to say to CJ Burton, a 4-star, or any of these big guys that are coming in, hey, we're a school where you can come in. If you do a great job, you can sell your jersey and you can make money off of this. Easy first start right there, a way to market them. And all these other smaller programs that they're doing all build up to being able to market recruits and put Boston College at a better spot. Now, is this going to be the same as paying Bryce Young $1 million or Caleb Williams a deal for Beat by Dre? No. But if you're really thinking Boston College is going to be a team that's going to fight in that market, you're delusional. I don't know what else to say. They're not going to do it. It's never going to be that way here. But you can still get solid to good recruits and get those guys because BC has never been in the blue chip market. They have never, ever, ever. I mean, everyone still talks about Brian Toll, and that was 20 years ago. That was the last blue chip recruit BC's ever gotten. Okay? So BC is going to continue to build the way that they have. They can still continue to improve on their recruiting. And to do that, they have to really build their NIL program. And doing something simple like this is a good way to start. So just a really small thought. So thank you all for listening. This is AJ Black. You can catch us on tomorrow's show. We'll talk more about all the news breaking in BC sports. Follow us on Twitter at LockedOnBC. You can follow me on Twitter at AJBlack_BC. Thank you all for listening, and check us out on YouTube at Locked On Boston College. Take care, everyone.